If you could choose a new past, what would you pick? A grand adventure? A different family? The love of your life? What we would change about our past can tell us what we truly want for our future, but the ability to do so is pure science fiction, at least for now. And there are few authors as influential or completely original as Philip K. Dick, with novels like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, The Man in the High Castle, and Minority Report being classics of modern sci-fi and going on to have many different interpretations on film and TV. And one of his best is the short story We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, and its adaptation, Total Recall. We Can Remember It from 1966 is a short but unpredictable story focused on one man's search for meaning that leads him to discover secrets he may have forgotten but has been permanently shaped by. Total Recall from 1990 is one of director Paul Verhoeven and star Arnold Schwarzenegger's best films, a sci-fi adventure that's just as much fantasy wish fulfillment, filtered through wild and brutal action, but both speak to ideas of dissatisfaction, yearning, and the impermanence of memory. This is the story of Philip K. Dick, Paul Verhoeven, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the search for purpose in life at the center of Total Recall. Author Philip K. Dick is one of the most influential modern sci-fi writers, and during his lifetime, Dick wrote 44 novels and 121 short stories, many of which have been adapted into TV shows and movies. Outside of what we're discussing today, the greatest are probably Blade Runner, Minority Report, and A Scanner Darkly, which have their own place in science fiction as their own thing. And in most of these, Dick creates stories of humans questioning their own existence and the seemingly core elements of what we assume makes us human: memory, free will, the soul, which are all contrasted against technological advancements in society. In his personal life, Dick suffered from a variety of mental health and medical issues, including extreme vertigo that began when he was in 7th grade, becoming so extreme that it often caused the author to feel dissociated from his body. Over the years, Dick was also diagnosed with schizophrenia, which was later disproved, but he also often suffered nervous breakdowns and weeks-long hallucinations. The author also had repeated suicide attempts, multiple divorces, and popped amphetamines like candy to the point that he kept them in a bowl in his kitchen. So what I'm trying to say is that, as a person, Philip K. Dick was what scientists called a hot mess, but that heavily influenced his writing and the ideas of his stories. Dick's science fiction stories often question the connections of minds and bodies, the malleability of memory, and what truly qualifies as human. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale was originally published as a short story in April of 1966 for the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. Wow, they must not have had much competition back then, huh? Before many further republishings in other collections thanks to its ongoing popularity, Dick's prestigious position in science fiction, and the adaptations we'll get to in a few minutes. We Can Remember It follows Douglas Quayle, an average government clerk whose lifelong dream is to visit Mars, which has been colonized by Earth but is still expensive and difficult to get to. So with his daily life unfulfilling and his wife Kirsten a real nag, dang women, Quayle settles for the next best thing: getting a memory of going to Mars implanted by Recall Incorporated. Recall can remember anything for you, concocting new memories of places and times and adventures that will be perfectly stored in your mind forever, complete with little trinkets in your home to help convince you that it all really happened. But Quayle runs into a problem. The memory he wants, going to Mars as a covert agent for the government group Interplan, already exists. Quayle really did go there and assassinate a target, only for the government to erase his memory and plant him back into society as a common man 6 months prior. Yet the repressed memories and desires have driven him to Recall. And now, with his memories resurfacing, and his thoughts read by a device planted in his head, Quayle is pursued by government agents that want to silence him for good. We Can Remember It has a lot of the main ideas that power the plot of Total Recall at its core, but Dick's story is much simpler and more focused. We'll get into the plot of the film in a minute, but here, Quayle stays on Earth and the majority of the story takes place in the Recall offices, learning about the procedure and attempting the memory implant. Even his fight to escape is very brief, with the entire story lasting for less than 40 pages. Dick's not really interested in telling some huge adventure here. His focus is on memories and what experiences shape us at our core, even if we can't remember them. But instead of some massive adventure and escape, Quail quickly agrees to undergo another memory wipe and memory implant by government agents, going back to recall to understand his truly greatest fantasy and getting that to come true in his mind. And this is where Dick's story really gets wild and fun. Deep down, Quail's life has always been propelled by a childhood fantasy, one where a spaceship full of tiny mice-like aliens lands right in front of him as a young boy and are intent on conquering the Earth. But Quail's kindness and mercy toward them convince the tiny leaders and their thousands of waiting ships to stop the invasion as long as Quail lives. So, by merely existing, Quail said, feeling a growing pleasure, by simply being alive, I keep Earth safe from alien rule. I'm, in effect then, the most important person on Terra, without lifting a finger. It's the type of self-importance and desire to do something meaningful that has propelled him all his life. But there's one more catch. As recall technicians sedate Quail and prepare to implant the memory, they once again find it already exists. Our seemingly normal man really did save the Earth from invasion thanks to his kind heart as a kid. He's the most important man on Earth. He just never remembered it. I really love this story, and it's a story of three minds. The early parts are dark and cynical, and are really focused on Quail being dissatisfied with marriage and everyday life, and just the world as it is and his place in it. The twist, which leads to a lot of paranoia as he's revealed to be this government agent that needs to go on the run, is fun and unpredictable, and really this is where the majority of Verhoeven's movie gets its plot and ideas and themes. But it's the second twist that really sets it apart, and it almost turns We Can Remember It into a comedy, but this whole idea of Quail truly having greater purpose in the entire world because of him being a really good person as a kid is just a wonderful little idea of finally having everything you want in life, being special, and being a good person at your heart that has caused you to search for meaning. At the very end, Quail is on the precipice of getting everything he ever wanted, and not in some dark and cynical way, but because he really was this kind and caring child that saved the world. And I think that's very, very sweet. Dick's story also never questions what's real or not. The division is very clear, and the author makes sure to prove that Quail's secret agent life and alien invasion salvation are proved to be true outside of recall. Instead, it's focused on repressed memories, desires, and the core of the human mind, just interpreted through several outlandish and fun sci-fi twists. I am a fictionalizing philosopher, not a novelist. My novel and story writing ability is employed as a means to formulate my perception, said Dick. The core of my writing is not art, but truth. Thus, what I tell is the truth, yet I can do nothing to alleviate it, either by deed or explanation. Yet this seems somehow to help a certain kind of sensitive, troubled person for whom I speak. I think I understand the common ingredient in those whom my writing helps. They cannot or will not blunt their own intimations about the irrational, mysterious nature of reality, and for them, my corpus is one long ratiocination regarding this inexplicable reality, an integration and presentation, analysis and response, and personal history. 8 years later, in 1974, producer Ronald Shusett, most famous for co-creating Alien just a few years later, purchased the rights to We Can Remember It for $1,000, going on to write a screenplay adaptation with Dan O'Bannon, his Alien collaborator. However, their version stalled, with part-time producer and full-time madman Dino De Laurentiis optioning the script and bringing on original dang-ass freak David Cronenberg to direct. However, massive disagreements between Cronenberg and De Laurentiis led to the director quitting the project, with the production eventually entirely scrapped when De Laurentiis Entertainment Group filed for bankruptcy in 1988. That's something I've already talked about in my Stan Winston video for those working on the interconnected web of my YouTube channel. That led to Carolco Pictures, oh look, another studio I've covered in my Cutthroat Island video, purchasing the rights to Total Recall for $3 million at the urging of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had been interested in it for years. That also led to Arnold overseeing script revisions, casting, and the hiring of Paul Verhoeven as director in the wake of RoboCop. Screenwriter Gary Goldman then provided major rewrites that shaped it into the final film, reworking the Mars portion of the movie, differentiating the evil original Hauser personality and the heroic Quaid persona, and making the line between reality and fantasy blurrier. The finalized product is 1990's Total Recall, an absolute banger.
How would you know if someone stole your mind?
Recall begins in 2084 with everyday construction worker Douglas Quaid, Schwarzenegger, dreaming of Mars and unsatisfied with his life, soon going to Recall for a memory implant that will see him go to the Red Planet as a secret agent to uncover alien life, beat the bad guys, and save the world. But when the company begins the procedure, they accidentally reveal Quaid's suppressed memories as a real-life secret agent for the mysterious agency on Mars. With his cover blown, Quaid is on the run, trying to uncover the truth as he heads to Mars and joins the resistance fighting for freedom against the agency. But is this real, or just a Recall memory implant gone wrong? Alongside its outlandish sci-fi concepts, there are elements of horror, thriller, and espionage that come and go throughout the movie, but really what I think Total Recall is at its core is fantasy wish fulfillment. Everything in life has purpose for Quaid. His dead-end job in life is hiding action and adventure just beneath the surface, his loveless marriage is just a trick, keeping him apart from his one true love, and once he realizes who he truly is, he saves the world. Arnold obviously brings muscles upon muscles to the role of Quaid, automatically distinguishing him as an action hero and making the reveal that he's a government agent much more believable. He simply doesn't look like an everyman, and that alone pushes the question of reality more toward this all actually happening, which is also why they changed his civilian job from office worker to construction. It's a huge change from De Laurentiis' casting of Richard Dreyfuss as Quaid in the scrapped 80s production. Dreyfuss is small, annoying, average-looking, annoying, and looks like someone who would have a normal life with secret agent fantasies. Did I mention he's annoying? Arnold looks like a hero, acts like a hero, and is proven to be a hero. And alongside all that are some truly wonderful Arnie noises. Hey Lenny, cue the noises.
You blew my cover! Yeah, come on. Okay, bring him down here! Hurry!
Okay, so let me just gush about Arnie for a second. I have mentioned it before in previous videos, but I don't talk all that much about Schwarzenegger movies, but I absolutely love Arnie. Alongside Harrison Ford, Arnie was probably the first movie star that I really recognized and got excited to see as a kid. That's a combination of seeing his family-friendly 90s stuff like Jingle All the Way, and seeing movies like The Terminator, Eraser, and True Lies at way too young of an age. I really owe you one, Mom and Dad, and I swear I'll stop by the sewer and bring some fish soon. And when I got older, I just watched more and more of his stuff, and began to appreciate him as an actor beyond just the iconography. Arnie is the ideal modern action star, but he also has so much charisma and a lot of intelligence behind his choices. Obviously, he may be limited in his acting range, although I think that's way too exaggerated by his detractors, but he picks strong roles that let him be flexible in what he can do for a lot of different directors. Honestly, looking back at his career, Arnie's heyday is pretty short, really just the mid-80s through the late 90s, but what an awesome string of hits. It's star power and self-awareness, mixing with just the right roles that really bring out the best in him. And Total Recall really is one of his best roles.
Consider that a divorce.
Arnie's not just an absolute megastar mode throughout it, but he gets to be in a lot of different roles. Bad guy, everyday worker, planet-saving hero, and it's all done with just enough of a wink at the audience to really keep it light and fun. Arnie is the big, colorful personality at the center that allows the film to shift in many different directions. From a filmmaking perspective, this might be Verhoeven's most well-made film. While I think RoboCop is his best movie, and one I'll love making a video on someday, Recall is just so impressive from every aspect. Tonally, Recall doesn't have a satirical edge like RoboCop, but it is propelled by ideas of exploitation, segregation, and people in power leveraging resources to maintain control. Cohagen, the governor of the Mars colony played by Ronnie Cox, is exploiting the planet's people and withholding plentiful resources. Meanwhile, the shoddy protection dome on the planet has exposed people to loads of radiation, creating mutants that the agency treats like a dirty secret. Rather than provide air, protection, and care, Cohagen simply wants them all to die to stay in power. And as the finale shows, an ancient alien reactor oxygenates the entire planet, saves the mutants, and kills Cohagen in a sort of cosmic justice that rights the wrongs generations have been forced to live with. But Recall's big idea is the power of memory to shape our personalities and give our lives meaning. Like the short story, Recall opens with Quaid dissatisfied with his life and longing for something more. Here he's plagued by recurring dreams of Mars and a woman we'll come to learn is Melina, played by Rachel Ticotin. Quaid's dissatisfaction bothers his wife Lori, played by Sharon Stone, a little, but she puts up with it and serves as a reminder to him that his life is good enough, and that he can be happy like this. Of course, he goes to Recall for a Mars adventure memory, hoping to play out his recurring dream in a more tangible way, and asking for the exact details to come to life, including, in maybe the film's biggest tell that this is all a dream, a woman that looks exactly like Melina. From there, Total Recall explodes its structure into bigger and bigger forms and waves. A freak out at Recall, his wife turning on him as a secret agent, an escape from Earth, mutants on Mars, ancient alien ruins, and finally a giant battle to be the savior of the entire planet. The plot, the characters, the effects all get bigger and bigger as these waves of the movie happen, and Verhoeven's approach to making the film is a perfect accompaniment to this version of Total Recall. His direction is huge, the sets are huge, the action is bloody and outlandish, and it all feels just a little bit cartoonish and removed from reality, but that's really important to make this story work because we need to buy into everything that's happening and let us go along with these outlandish and really exaggerated ideas that are getting layered on top of each other. That's accompanied by a really awesome look from cinematographer Joost Vacano, gigantic, slightly cartoonish futuristic sets by production designer William Sandell, and wonderfully gushy, squishy work from consistently underappreciated special effects artist Rob Bottin. And so while we're already in a future removed from our everyday life, strange, illogical elements keep getting added on. Head tracers and past selves and malfunctioning robot masks, and psychic mutants and cab drivers that suddenly turn to turtles in time boss fights, and heads that swell up like those rubber toys you squish, and finally alien structures that change planetary atmospheres. It's part of what makes the film so fun. You can never truly predict where it's going to go, and you can simply excuse its logic because there's this little nagging feeling in your head that none of this is real, which lets you just go with it. Beyond Quaid's initial uncovery of his hidden past, the other big twist is that the whole white personality is a big double turn. Slowly coming to understand who he was as Secret Agent Hauser, Quaid believes that he was once a bad guy who took up the rebellion's cause once he came to understand them, only to find out that Hauser was always evil and merely pretended to have changed, with the Quaid persona created to get him deeper into the rebellion to destroy them. And yet, the scheme worked too well. Quaid is a good person who truly wants to help the rebellion. Not only that, but he doesn't want to go back to who he was before. Pitting a mind against itself, and playing with the horror of completely losing your own personality. I think it's a really smart extra layer to the story and even goes several steps further than what Dick's short explored. In We Can Remember It, you can forget your past but still have a longing informed by the experiences you can't remember anymore. The memories disappear, but their impact remains. In Total Recall, a complete memory wipe and new experiences fundamentally shift everything about a person. New motivations, new morals, new goals in life. We can never really speak to which of these approaches to memory's impact on personality is true, but I really enjoy both because they're discussing how our perceptions of our own lives change over time, how our memories are forgotten and then re-remembered in incorrect ways, and how we choose to understand our own life and our own personhood. So, is Quaid's adventure real or just a dream? You can see Total Recall as a big, crazy, meathead action movie, because, well, it is. But it's also so smartly written and directed. It achieves this perfect balance of hinting toward this being both real and unreal. So many things said in the Recall office come to pass. But how can this be fantasy when we see people not around Quaid conspiring against him? Verhoeven has said that he made sure to seed ideas of double lives and duality from the very start so that viewers can interpret the story as either real or dream on their own, and choose to either read into supporting characters' duplicity or see them as simply the basis for Quaid's dissatisfaction and need for fantasies. But much to his credit, Verhoeven has never given a definitive statement on whether Recall's story is real or implant, allowing it to play both ways and enriching the movie by keeping both possibilities in tension with one another throughout. To Verhoeven, Total Recall is a close relative to RoboCop, with both centering on people who have had their lives and minds taken away from them, and then go on a journey to rediscover the paradise that was their past, saying, For me, RoboCop is about Paradise Lost. Nah, I'm not gonna do that. That's kind of exaggerated, but it's something that to some degree is in the heart of the movie. And if I say that Total Recall, for me, had to do with fear of psychosis, that's the same over and understated situation, yeah? It has to do with the fear, a basic fear of myself, that psychosis is a way my brains could go. For the audience, every moment in the movie seems to be real, but when you get to the next scene, you can doubt the scene before, yeah? I'm exaggerating because it would be really terrible to do that to an audience. Everybody would be driven crazy, probably. But every once in a while, you realize that what you saw before should be seen in a different way. It was not reality, or it was a misinterpreted reality. Really, the smartest addition to this adaptation is Quaid's encounter with Dr. Edgemar, who identifies as an artificially implanted persona trying to get Quaid to realize he's having a so-called schizoid embolism, a term made up for the film, but something that feels like how Dick would have described his own life experiences. The guy once said a data-filled pink laser from space was beamed into his brain, and needs to wake up alongside his wife, trying to get him to come back to reality. Or is he an agent trying to get inside Quaid's head and kill him? Of course, it would be no fun if Quaid just gave up in the second act of the movie, so of course he refuses to believe him, and as soon as he kills Edgemar, the film goes completely nuts.
Now you've done it!
With the mutants, aliens, and world-saving adventures bursting onto the scene, and making the first two acts of the movie seem tame in comparison. Personally, I lean more toward this being a fantasy in Quaid's mind, and maybe he isn't even getting lobotomized at the end. Maybe this is all a really complex and totally fabricated memory all happening at recall and he's about to wake up and be really happy. But we can never really know for sure. And of course, this entire movie is made up, so why not just let it all be a fantasy? I'm not sure if you know this, but films are made up. They're just, fictional. They're not really happening on screen, so, don't take it all too seriously. And personally, I would rather have this be not entirely able to be solved by the end, and to not give us any definitive answer, because it's just more fun that way. By the end of Total Recall, Quaid has done everything that the folks at Recall said he would.
I don't want to spoil it for you, Doug, but you rest assured, by the time the trip is over, you get the girl, kill the bad guys, and save the entire planet.
And it's those oh-so-specific blue skies on Mars that make our hero remember that this all might be a dream. And is that bright white light just the movie ending, or Quaid getting lobotomized? With all his dreams finally coming true, he doesn't really care.
Well then kiss me quick before you wake up.
Released on June 1st, 1990, Total Recall was a big hit, making $261 million against a $60 million budget. Followed up by Kindergarten Cop and Terminator 2, it really showed just how unstoppable Arnie was on film in the early 90s. Verhoeven followed up the hit with Basic Instinct, Showgirls, and Starship Troopers. Maybe not the strongest series of movies, but undeniably his films. And the movie was really Sharon Stone's breakout role, leading to Basic Instinct, The Quick and the Dead, Casino, and a really big 90s. Verhoeven and Schwarzenegger briefly considered making a Recall sequel using Dick's Minority Report as the basis, with Quaid, now a police officer on Mars, intersecting with mutant precogs, but the film never went anywhere. As for other Philip K. Dick adaptations, the next major film wasn't until 2002 with Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise's take on Minority Report, and honestly, for as influential and beloved as Dick has become, adaptations are kinda scarce, with Blade Runner, Total Recall, and Minority Report being the most beloved and now decades old. When the time came for a studio to make another Dick adaptation, it was Columbia Pictures going back to a tried and true story. And that leads us to the Total Recall remake from 2012.
What do you know about this Recall place?
Stay away from them. Don't mess with your mind, man.
Welcome to Recall. First time?
Tell us your fantasy. We'll give you the memory.
The big issue with the Total Recall remake is not that it's just trying to top something that millions of people already love, but that it's a copy of a copy. The 2012 movie is saying that it's closer to Dick's original short story because it takes place on Earth, but really this is just the same Total Recall movie done with a modern lens and a lot less of an exciting idea behind it all. Kurt Wimmer and Mark Baumbach's script is just a remake of Verhoeven's movie, and not a new spin on the original short story. You can tell this is a fact because the screenplay is credited with a story by Shusett O'Bannon and John Pavil, who wrote the original, and there is no credit given to Dick at all. The story beats are very familiar. Doug Quaid, played by Colin Farrell, is an average factory worker that gets a memory implant of being a secret agent, only for the process to awaken his suppressed memories. Everything goes nuts and he's pulled between his undercover evil agent wife, Kate Beckinsale, and rebel love interest, Jessica Biel, while the villainous Cohagen, Bryan Cranston, closes in. All the same beats are here. Double crosses, a distinct pre- and post-memory wipe, the question of what's real and what isn't. The only big change is that half of the Earth has been destroyed and a gigantic elevator called the Fall connects the two sides of the planet by ultra-fast travel through the planet core, complete with zero-gravity inversion. And yes, that's a setup for an action scene later. Directed by Len Wiseman, best known for the Underworld movies and later getting quietly replaced on reshoots of Ballerina, he makes it all very sleek, gray, and well choreographed enough while still lacking any real personality. Wiseman's Total Recall is extremely 2012, and has all the hallmarks of a completely forgettable movie from the era. Colin Farrell in his bland action hero phase, Bryan Cranston and Bill Nighy cashing checks for bit parts, Jessica Biel and Kate Beckinsale as sexy badasses, and an extremely bland, gray, concrete sci-fi world. I think it says a lot about how creatively bankrupt this new Total Recall was, and how little faith the studio had in it, that a large portion of the film's marketing efforts revolved around showcasing the oh-so-very exciting, definitely indicative of the film's quality of writing, return of the three-breasted woman. She was everywhere, and is in the movie for like 20 seconds. There are a few interesting tweaks in the movie's extended director's cut, including Ethan Hawke as Hauser before he became Quaid, and an extended ending that seems to confirm this was all a dream, with Quaid now happy to live in the unreality. The theatrical cut, which is still the most widely available, teases the reality of it all but never really does anything with it. The 2010s are a weird time for sci-fi. CGI had fully reached a point where creative teams could shape a complex world that was bigger than ever, with sizable budgets that could hopefully make a decent profit at the box office. But so many lacked vision and creativity to set them apart. Honestly, I'm not surprised they didn't play How You Like Me Now during the finale here. Wiseman's Total Recall would make $211 million against its $125 million budget, fine but not amazing, and essentially be forgotten almost immediately, becoming more of a footnote when discussing Verhoeven's Total Recall, which is what I'm doing right now. And really, I don't think it's offensively bad, or anything that should be thrown out into the trash, but there's not a whole lot here to grasp onto. Really, it's just more interesting to watch this as a contrast that highlights the inventiveness and craziness and risks taken with Schwarzenegger's movie. But despite the many changes that Verhoeven and company made to Dick's original story, I think that both Total Recall and We Can Remember It For You Wholesale are driving toward the same ideas and desires innate within all people. Whether it's a wild adventurous story of sci-fi action on a futuristic Mars, or a small tale of a man uncovering who he is, these are sci-fi fantasies about finding purpose and meaning in life. About reckoning with your own deep dissatisfaction in the world and your place in it. Whether it's a dream long unfulfilled or a life that you never really wanted, there will always be something that everyone yearns for. And the reason why both Dick's story and Verhoeven's film will always find an audience is that we all hunger for something more. Finding it can be an adventure, and to grasp it, even if it's only a dream, can be a beautiful thing. Thanks for watching today's video, and now that the Halloween season is over, I thought that I would change things up slightly by going into a more sci-fi and action-heavy route with what I wanted to talk about in November. As I said in the video, I am a huge Schwarzenegger fan, and Total Recall is just a blast. I have so much fun always watching it, I had a great time talking about it for this video, and I had originally wanted to talk about Total Recall back in September, but I just ran out of time. So as soon as Halloween was over, I wanted to get back to talking about it. And like I've been doing lately, it also gave me the excuse to talk about a novel. Philip K. Dick is a fascinating sci-fi author because so much of his own personal struggles and mental health issues really affected his writing in an interesting way and made him a one-of-a-kind sci-fi creator. Obviously, he had a lot of struggles in his life, but it did make some fascinating art that I think he was trying to use to work out his greater issues and struggles. And Total Recall is a great example of a creative team taking an original concept and pushing it in an entirely different direction, but doing a lot of fascinating work with it, keeping in the spirit of what came before, and being really inventive on their own. Total Recall and We Can Remember It For You are both great sci-fi stories that you can take on their own or together and have a great time with them. Really, I think that Total Recall is a super smart piece of sci-fi action that you can take on its surface, but also dig underneath for some really fascinating concepts. And of course, Verhoeven, despite being somewhat of a controversial figure at some point in his career, and kind of falling off a bit by the end of the 90s, is a really interesting filmmaker that has a lot to unpack with his works. Like I mentioned, I am a huge RoboCop fan, and I'm really excited to talk about RoboCop someday. That will be its own retrospective that I'd like to talk about all of the movies, maybe the TV show, and definitely some comic books with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Total Recall, your favorite Schwarzenegger movies, your favorite Verhoeven movies, and maybe your favorite 80s and 90s sci-fi films, because Total Recall really does act as a bridge between the two decades. As always, a huge thank you to my members and patrons for their continued support, and if you'd like to be a member or patron, it's only $2 a month for early access to every video, and exclusive reviews voted on by the community every month. So until next time, I hope that you're taking care of yourselves, and living out your dreams.